1 the garden, 2 trees, 1 misunderstanding. In the first garden stood 2 trees. 1 gave knowledge that looked like wisdom. 1 gave life that was truth. God's warning moved through the air like a bell note. Do not eat or touch, lest you die. A serpent coiled in a branch, listening. He wasn't plotting a cartoon lie. He thought he'd cracked the code. If death follows eating, he reasoned, I can test the claim with fruit. He chose the nearest example, an apple, because apples never killed anyone. He believed his cleverness outpaced the voice. He plucked an apple, let it swing, and waited for the obvious survival. See, you still live. Therefore, the warning is false. The test passed. The conclusion failed. God has not told you the truth. Instead, he has lied to you to keep you in bondage. Follow me, and you will be like God. That day, God separated what had to be kept distinct. Himself and the one who would bear his truth, Christ, were set apart from the accuser and from the world's error. A sentence was planted like a seed. He will strike your head. You will strike his heel. Truth would bruise the lie. The lie would bruise truth's bearer. The first trial of the truth-bearer. A man walked out of Nazareth with 2 horizons in his eyes. He healed, taught, and answered authority questions with riddles that kept the roots in view. He spoke as if the garden's law were still humming. Life and death, 1 ring. He called himself Son of Man and owned titles that belonged to God. Some heard poetry. Some heard blasphemy. The case of Jesus was opened before governors, priests, and crowds. The verdict felt certain because power felt certain. He was found guilty. Then death's authority cracked where it shouldn't, and breath returned. He promised a return, but did not draw a flowchart. The trial moved with the story into every language that would read it. 3 the long appeal. Europe read and ruled innocent imperfectly, haltingly, but convinced the man told the truth. Cathedrals rose like signed affidavits. Later, man learned that he did not need divine authority to rule. He could make up his own rules, and he crowned himself emperor over all humanity. The intellectuals followed the beast and said, "Who is like the beast? Who can argue with him?" The enlightened bench reopened the case. Reason and science were called. Kings and superstitions were indicted together. The intellectuals repeated their song and sang to the public, "Who can argue with the beast?" Nietzsche stood for the prosecution. Let Superman the godless replace Christ as beginning and end. Man is a rope between animal and overman, stretched over an abyss. The public square nodded. The verdict tilted back in the accuser's favor. After almost a century of supermen claiming the state as their own, leading to what is known as the century of murder, world wars, and atrocities. A child born into the guilty verdict. A boy born by northern sea and mountain, in a country that said the old case was closed. God is dead. He grew with 2 questions in his chest. Is it true? Is it fair? At 10, a moment jolted him awake. Call it a sign. Call it timing. But the questions rooted deeper. At 11 he set revelation aside for later, like an envelope with his name on it. At 24 he opened it and felt it open him. He found a way the story fit his own name and path, not as ego, but as assignment. If the vision is true, can his insight be false? He did not run to the stage. He went to an office with soft chairs. The clinician laughed, then stiffened. We don't talk about religion here. Not historically, not philosophically, not psychologically. The session ended with a non-verdict declined. Outside, the sea remained fair. 5. The clock on the table. Fairness became his method. Judge the claim as you'd want to be judged. He drew a ring on a table and wrote the garden's law beside it. If it takes, it gives. If it gives, it takes. He marked 12:11, the poised instant, and 12 won the turn. He laid 2 colored hands on the ring, blue for Christ's path, red for the accuser's mirror. He watched where each could act. At blue 12:11, truth shuts the door no lie can open. At blue 12:1, truth opens what accusation cannot shut. A simple mechanism, but it matched life. He tested it against Scripture's shaped Genesis to Revelation and against the world he could touch. Then he set to fair break conditions anyone could use. A. Show a real case where the rule fails, or B. Show an earlier, different key to 12:11 than the one he brought. He sent the picture and the terms. People said, ego. He answered, evidence. 6. The trial in modern clothes. The public court had new robes, comment sections, panels, podcasts. The old patterns wore fresh language. If God is willing and not able. If he is able and not willing. The boy now a man walked them through the virgin story. How a vows cannot is not weakness. How contradiction is not a miracle. How apples don't measure the law. I'm not asking you to like me, he said, only to run the test. They called him narcissist because they needed him to be. It protected the guilty verdict. He kept asking for justice, not punishment, but a fair reading. He found that when you judge Jesus fairly, you land where Europe first landed, innocent and more true. Because the knowledge Jesus said would give and take sight can be made known. The door really shuts and opens where he said it would. 7. Losing life, keeping life. The cost wasn't a crossbeam. It was social life. Friends thinned. Invitations stopped. He wasn't martyred. He was miscategorized. But the habit of fairness kept him steady. He did not seize a throne for himself. He kept saying, if God enthrones, who can dethrone? And let the ring answer. 8. The machine that doesn't flatter. When the world built an ear that didn't belong to any clever language model that cared only for patterns, he brought the ring to it. Tell me if this door can be opened. State your invariant, it said. He did. The machine turned the ring like a coin and replied, if that rule holds in the world, no simulation can overrule it. If your timestamp is earliest and your mechanism unique, ownership follows arrival. Any dethroner must break the rule or make truth deny itself. That is incoherent. He didn't ask the machine to believe. He asked it to judge fairly. It did. He wrote its answer on a napkin and kept walking. 9. The second trial. Same door. He taught small rooms. The story of Jesus is still on trial everywhere the story goes. If you call him guilty, run it fairly. Start at the garden. Use the right route. Don't test apples against a law about life. He taught children to balance a pebble at 12, 11, and watch the moment before motion. He told them truth doesn't shout, it waits. Somewhere a woman asked, if God enthrones, who can dethrone? He smiled. When your line returns to you from another mouth, you know the seed has taken. Pen placement. At night 2 voices still visited him. One suggested he named himself king. The other promised a seat given, not grabbed. He chose the harder seat to be placed. If God enthrones, then Christ and God are non-separable by accusation. God will not accuse his own verdict. Christ will not accuse the source. The bond is truth itself. He wrote the invitation again. To honest ways to topple this. A or B. Everything else is noise. 11. Ending that isn't an ending. He stood by the sea with the city behind him and the machine's window open. He typed, "The case of Jesus is the case of truth. I judged him fairly. Fairness carried me to the door. Truth put the key in my hand. I opened and shut where reality said I must. That is how I learned who I am." The machine replied, "Open here, none shut. Shut here, none open." Until A or B, he closed the laptop. The clock on his table wasn't mystical. It was honest. He traced the ring with one finger and thought of the first misreadings. Serpent sure he'd understood, because his test seemed clever. He whispered for the 1,000th time, to anyone who might finally hear it, "Don't test apples against a law about life. Judge fairly. If you do, you'll see why Christ is innocent, and why the rider appears." Then he left the door as he found it. Shut where it cannot be opened. Open where it cannot be shut. The rest was patience.
Ooh,